All right, guys, with the 2023 NFL season winding down, I thought it would be a fun little activity to go through some players that may or may not have become washed this season. Yes, it's the idea of a very solid NFL player, maybe even a superstar, getting older, getting significantly less effective. Let's go through some players that may or may not be washed, starting with Russell Wilson. Now, Wilson has kind of a weird story when it comes to his time with the Denver Broncos, the crazy trade, multiple first-round picks coming from Seattle, like a 9-time Pro Bowler, and he goes to Denver and is just not the same QB. Last year, you could say, was the start of him being washed. This year, he had a very strange season. You look at the touchdown to interception ratio, very solid, but the total QBR, the efficiency stats are just not there, and it seems like his time as an elite quarterback has come to an absolute screeching halt. We will see. I'm sure he's going to latch on to a team next year, probably be a starter, maybe a team like the Saints. That is just speculation. But yeah, at this point, you could kind of say maybe not completely washed because of the good touchdown to interception ratio, but overall, it's very clear Russell Wilson going from Seattle to Denver, something happened to where he is not the same QB. You could say the system built around him, although I don't know if I'll fully buy that considering Denver does have some decent receivers. They've got a good young running back. It's just kind of weird, the current situation that Russell Wilson is in, to where 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, but now he is officially benched, and the Denver Broncos looking at that contract, finding an out and saying, we are done. We're moving on this offseason. We're not going to continue to invest this crazy amount of money into Wilson. The next player that got washed in 2023, it is Derrick Henry. And I'll be honest, a lot of running backs are going to be on this list just because it is the nature of the position. Derrick Henry, first time in his career averaging under 4 yards per carry, 15 games at this point, under 1,000 yards. I have to say, not all that surprising considering the crazy workload that he has gotten beginning in 2018, 215 carries, over 300 carries in 2019 and 2020. He gets injured in 2021, and then last year he had over 300 carries. Also, he won a Heisman at Alabama. He had a crazy workload there in his junior season. Derrick Henry, this is not surprising at this point that he is slowing down significantly. It'll be very interesting to see what the offseason holds for Henry. How do teams view him at this point as a depreciating asset, but still a very big-bodied running back that can rumble and convert a 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, what have you? I would say he showed significant signs of being washed in 2023. Next, we've got Austin Eckler. Now, Austin Eckler, I'm not going to blame this on him. I'm going to blame this on the Chargers roster construction. This dude was never supposed to be a first down back. He's a really good pass catcher. I would give him 5 or 6 carries, maybe. The most I would give him in a game is around 10. You can take a look at his yards per carry in 27. Well, he barely played in 2017, but he was up around 5 yards per carry. It has plummeted for the first time in his career under 4, and his efficiency is just horrible. I still think he can be a decent 3rd down back, but at this point, the idea that he should be getting the ball on 1st and 10, 2nd and 9, it's just ridiculous. Austin Eckler, this is what happens to running backs. Believe it or not, he's only in like his 8th year, and he barely played his first year, but still, the wear and tear gets to you, especially if you're a smaller guy. Austin Eckler, I would say, is kind of washed at this point here in 2023. The next player, another running back, it is Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon coming out of Oklahoma, a 5-star recruit, ends up on the Bengals. He's played there his entire career, and you can see the last few years averaging under 4 yards per carry, under 1,000 yards. I would think he would be on the verge at this point of possibly being on kind of that borderline washed category for running backs just based off of the last few seasons. He's not been considered a top running back, but it is kind of weird. The running back position right now in the NFL, it's super unhealthy. There's very few elite running backs. Running backs are not valuable, and you're seeing a lot of these guys just fall off a cliff. I'm not saying that's what happened to Joe Mixon. He still is a little still effective, with the 850 yards, averaging 4 yards a carry, but his longest rush, just 22 yards. There's just no explosiveness with Joe Mixon there. When it comes to 222 carries, your longest carry went for 22 yards. Joe Mixon, borderline washed here in 2023. This next one, it's another running back, and it is, believe it or not, only in his third year, Najee Harris. Now, Najee Harris actually improved his yards per carry to 4, but you just look at him, you see how slow he is compared to college. This is another dude who got a lot of carries at Alabama his sophomore and especially junior year, and it's a likely story, an unfortunate story for a running back. You've got to wonder what happens with Najee Harris. The former first-round pick went 24th overall in the draft. They're certainly not going to exercise the option on his 5th year. They're going to decline that. What does Najee Harris's next contract look like? Just looking at these stats, I think it's going to be really, really sad for him. And you've got to wonder with the running back position right now in the NFL, with some of these guys, there's an incentive to not get carries early in your career and then have a really good breakout year and try and get a big contract, because Najee Harris at this point, I do not think is going to be getting anywhere close to like a 4 or 5 year deal when it is time for him to get possibly a contract extension. Everyone says Warren is already the better running back on the Steelers. Crazy to think a player could be washed after 3 years, but it does seem to be trending in that direction. The next one, it is another running back, and it's Cam Akers. What happened to Cam Akers? I mean, you take a look at his 2022 season, it was decent, almost 4.5 yards per carry, almost 800 yards, the 7 touchdowns, and in 2023, I don't remember this happening. Cam Akers played 1 game with the Rams and had 22 carries for 29 yards? Is that correct? Oh my goodness. No. And then goes to Minnesota, and he's played slightly better on Minnesota, appearing in 6 games, 138 yards. But at this point, Cam Akers, you might say, oh, maybe he's just not skilled. I think Cam Akers is skilled. This is a former highly ranked guy that did have a nice career at FSU, but it just hasn't translated to the NFL. Seemed like he was one of the up-and-coming running backs, but it has quickly torpedoed at this point. The next potentially washed player, it is Travis Kelce. Now listen, I'm not saying Travis Kelce is washed just yet, but at this point, the dude is 34. He plays a taxing position, tight end. You look at his yards per reception, lowest in his career by almost 2 yards, only 5 touchdowns, under 1,000 yards. Travis Kelce, he is showing signs of slowing down. I think he could still be serviceable over the next few years, but when it happens in the NFL, it happens fast, and Travis Kelce just a little bit slower, a little bit less efficient, becoming washed. You can feel it. It's not surprising. He's had a great Hall of Fame career, but he's 34. He's played, look at he's an Iron Man, honestly, looking at 16 games all throughout his entire career, barely missing anything, but it'll be interesting to see what Travis Kelce does next year in terms of that. And then the next washed player, this one is fairly obvious. It's Dalvin Cook, and this just goes to show you this is another typical story for a running back in the NFL. Starts off with Minnesota as a mid-round pick, ends up having 4 straight 1,000-yard rushing seasons, but kind of, towards the end of it in 2022, his yards per carry go down, and then goes to the Jets. This is literally a Le'Veon Bell 2.0 situation where he's just completely washed the second he puts on a New York Jets uniform, and he has 214 yards on the year. Breece Hall is far and away a better running back at this point in their careers, averaging just 3.2 yards per carry. Dalvin Cook is very clearly washed. The next potentially washed player, I'm going to say he's not washed, Derek Carr. So a lot of Saints fans have been hating on Derek Carr, but this is kind of just what Derek Carr is every single year. You take a look at his stats, 19 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, high completion percentage. He always has that. A lot of checkdowns. I think Alvin Kamara one game had like 12 receptions for like 70 yards. I remember with Derek Carr and everyone was talking about it. But yeah, this is basically what Derek Carr is. I'm going to say he's not washed at this point. But guys, that is just a video on some of the players that became washed here in the NFL for 2023. Make sure you're following me on X. Link to that's always in the description.